family, to God we give the glory. Good news is here. Welcome to the FAVR Show. I am Pamela Lowery. There has been so much going on in the world today, but FAVR is here to keep you encouraged, enlightened, and spiritually focused. Now today, as usual, we have another amazing show to sizzle in your spirit. Today we're going to talk about entertainment, wedding cakes, and more. This week we have the best for you again. We have Pastor McKinstry III from the renowned worship center of Atlanta. And if you are planning on getting married, stick around for some blazing hot tips. Now let's get started. Spring is here and April is Minority Health Month. So FAVR family, on our upcoming episodes, we will be joined by a healthcare professional that will prayerfully keep us all on the right track. We had such an amazing response on our last mental health segment that we continued the conversation, and we've partnered with the Alzheimer's Association, and Tanesha Tyler-Carr will join us to discuss signs, symptoms, and more coming next.
I should be thinking, but I know that I have changed. A better place now, a new season. Gone is the pain.
Welcome back, FAVR family. In light of the pandemic, I know some churches are now conducting hybrid services, and some across the country have totally reopened. But have you let the transformation of society, of the world, interfere with your relationship with God? Now, joining me is Pastor McKinstry III from Worship Center of Atlanta, and we're going to briefly talk about what's going on in the church today. Good morning, Pastor, and thank you so much for joining us. What's going on in the state of the church? So many people are using bedside Baptists as an excuse not to worship the Lord. What's going on?
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me, and I'm honored. I'm glad you asked that. What has happened is we have what we find a true example of what we call the lukewarm church that's going on. People have Christian tied to their name, but they don't have the real transformation because they're using any type of an excuse. They can go everywhere else, but you can't come back into the house of the Lord. I understand if it's one thing if you're still quarantining yourself, but if any place that you know that you're going to be protected, it's going to be in the house of the Lord. Now, there are some things. Now, the Lord had to do what he had to do concerning his hand being in this pandemic on some churches being closed, because there are some churches that really need to be closed. But there were some churches that there were some things that, and the reason why some of them had to go back out and go back out of the church is because what has happened is they left the same way they came. Because God gave specific instruction how you're supposed to usher in his presence. Because what happened is we got too many people, they're trying to be cultural. They're trying to be cultural and trying to bring culture into the church, and that's not what God intended to be. They call themselves doing a new thing. And when you call yourself doing a new thing, what is happening is you're allowing people to die of spiritual malnutrition. That's what's happening in the church today, because they're so caught up in this motivational speaking, but instead of giving them the truth and the word of God. And let me give you an example when I say a new thing. The Bible says that David was bringing back the Ark of the Covenant on a new cart. David was trying to do something new. And because what he did, he allowed death to happen because God gave specific instruction how you're supposed to usher him in. But because he was doing something new, he caused death to happen. And that's what's been happening in the church.
So that brings up a key question for me, because social media, so many people rely on memes and social media influencers, and it's not biblically based. And they're making major life decisions off of what they see from social media. So that may be the new thing, right? So what do you say about that, Pastor?
What has happened is I tell people all the time, I don't preach to live. I live to preach. And what happened is people are caught up on the money instead of doing kingdom work. God is going to take care of us regardless, but they're looking at the bottom line. I've had some pastors told me that if they can never go back to the church, they're making more money now not being in the church and not overhead and all these other things, and they rather stay this way. Well, their purpose is wrong. So they have gotten it wrong. So what has happened is a lot of them are mismanaging their season in their life. The Bible talked about King Uzziah prospered in everything he did as long as he consulted the Lord. But the day he operated in areas he had no business operating in, there were sores around his head. You got to remember when they anointed king, they anointed him going around in a circle. So there was flies on his anointing. And what is happening is there's a lot of people who have allowed flies to get on their anointing because they're caught up on the money.
Do you think people can identify when the enemy is working? Because there's so many things. You're on social media. It's anything that you can imagine that is on social media. Things are happening in the world. People have become so distracted, and the enemy is having a field day. Do you think that in light of social media and everything that's going on, people's senses are off because the shift has happened? There's a shift, but people, in my opinion, are not paying attention. Do you see the same? What do you have to say about that, Pastor?
Because people have they're caught up on their self. Too many people are trying to be famous when God said, I'll make your name great. I'd rather be great in the eyesight of God than famous amongst everybody else. And so that's what everybody's caught up on their own fame. And that's the reason what is happening. So when you caught up on your own fame, then you don't have your ear tuned to what God is saying. I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, I never shut down my church. And the reason why that was the instruction God gave me. And a lot of pastors was trying to figure out how he was able to do it. No one got sick. No one got in harm's way in church. I said, because those were God gave me specific instructions how to handle things. Spread out my church. My seniors stay at home. Underlying conditions stay at home. Sinuses, because people didn't know if it was sinuses or what, stay at home. And I shut down children's church because God needed certain lighthouses still to stay open. And I was one of them. And so what had happened is I told other pastors, I said, you got to hear God for yourself. And you can't hear God for yourself when you're too busy. You can't do that. And that's your consecration time. You stay before the Lord.
So much great information right here. You all stay tuned for more with the word coming right here from Pastor, because we're not in church the way we need to, but we need the information to feed our souls right after these messages.
The family's visit to the forest inspired a beautiful question. Mother, mother, am I a tree? You tell me to stand tall. You tell me to stay rooted. I think I am a tree. My child, of course you are. But what kind of tree will you be? The kind to hug or the kind to climb? Doesn't matter which you choose, so long as you choose to be a tree that's kind.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to the favorite show, you all. We're sitting here having a great conversation, and as it relates to the church and the current state of the church. Now, Pastor, thank you so much for them gems that you're just dropping on us. But where do you see the future of the church at this point?
There's a weeding out that's happening. What is going to happen is there is going to be, and I told people probably about 6.5 years ago on New Year's Eve service, I said, we got our 7 years of plenty. And I said, then the market's getting ready to crash. The economy is getting ready to go bad. Because what has happened is too many people are caught up on the things of the world than the things of Christ. And what is going to happen is the ones who, I told the people that we are in that place where we got to stay in our Goshen, where we're going to prosper. We're going to do all those things. But what is going to happen is God is going to reward the ones who's been faithful. We're going to be fine. The ones who've been faithful are going to be fine. But what's going to happen is he's going to draw people back to him, to the church what's getting ready to take place and happen. So they can stay at home. They can get ease in Zion if they want. But what is happening is they allow themselves to put themselves in a storm. Example, I always got to give you the word. When the disciples was with Jesus and they didn't recognize by that great provision when Jesus took those loaves and that fish and fed the several thousand, they made themselves to the point where they was a candidate for a storm. Jesus told them, go and I will meet you. When they was in the middle and the deep of the sea, a storm hit them, a storm that did not hit land yet. A storm hit them in the middle of the sea. And they did not recognize on who Jesus really was until after he walked on the water, got in the boat, and then they say, "True, you are the Son of God." When you don't recognize who Jesus really is in your life, then you're a candidate for a storm.
So how can people feed themselves spiritually right now? Because although we have the distractions, we have social media, how, if you are lost right now, if someone was to come upon this show and have never had their own personal relationship and experience with Christ, what would you say to those individuals?
Not only their prayer life, but they got to find them a local house where they can have a covering and be accountable. They got to find a shepherd. Everyone needs a shepherd. And that's going to be accountable and govern their soul. And there's a pastor for everyone. Matter of fact, my mother did a book on pastors, how we need them. And because everyone needs that covering, that accountability, and a person, that spiritual covering that's going to cover them.
Okay. So your testimony, you have an amazing testimony on how you came to Christ and came to where you are now. A lot of people feel as though God is not going to be here for me. I'm too far out here in these streets. I'm too far in my own dysfunction. What would you say to an individual who feel as though God would not let me back in? Because the world is crazy. We are in a crazy situation right now. But coming from your testimony, and share a little bit of that with our audience and how God transformed your life.
Well, growing up as a preacher kid, and my mother's considered one of the legends out here as far as female preachers, I didn't want to have nothing to do with church. I knew what I was called in my life, but I didn't want to have nothing to do with it. And I was always known as Dr. Pat McKinstry's son, Bishop Pat McKinstry. I was always known that, but I wanted to make a name for my own. I got involved in Gangster Disciples at an early age, and I lived my life as a for real gangster, and I rose up high in the ranks. And from that, I was running I was running a pipeline all through Northwest Ohio. But matter of fact, that's when crack cocaine really hit the scene. Because when I was younger, I was doing guns and weed, selling guns and weed during that time. But when I got older, probably about 17, 18, that's when the crack cocaine started hitting the scene. And then they had me under investigation. And the feds came to my mother's office one day at the church, and they said, "We know what your son is doing. We can never catch him." They said that we know he have other people working for him, but we're going to eventually catch him. And my mother called me one day. She said, "Son," she says, "you have no other choice but to do God's will. You either volunteer or get drafted. There's no other way. You either volunteer, come in your own way, or get drafted, come limping, but you're going to do God's will." She said, "Because I have a covenant with God, and he's a covenant keeping God, that my seed will be saved and my seed will be saved." I didn't want to have nothing to hear, nothing to do with that. When they finally caught me, I was looking at 15 to 35 years in prison. When I was in prison, I was still selling drugs in and out. My cousin was running things on the outside. I was still flooding the prison with dope on the inside. I structured everything, how the Gates of Disciple, how we were supposed to do things in the prison. And they said I was a threat to the institution. So they moved me from one prison to another and they put me in solitary confinement because they didn't want me in population because they said the influence I had. And the prison I was at, 7 people died by the hands of the guard. But before that took place and happened, my mother came to visit me and she said, "Son, I'm not coming to visit you no more." She said, "Because I see you're not trying to change. Every time I keep my hand on you, so I'm going to let go and let God." She says, "So I've turned your flesh over to Satan so your soul may be saved." Now, let me tell you something, Val. I'm an only child. And I'm a mama's boy. I ain't afraid to tell nobody, but that hurt me.
Yeah,
When
she
she
ain't
said
coming
that
to
to
see you
me.
no more.
Yeah, and so when that transformation had to take place in my life when she let go. So when they sent me to the elder prison and they took me inside confinement, they handcuffed me to a bed. They call them the goon squad, where the riot gears and their helmet to come in. They was coming in to take me out. And when they was coming in after me, when they cracked that door open, the only name I knew what to call on was Jesus. And I tell people that there's still power in that name. And as soon
Yes.
as I called on that name, there was something happened on the other side of the prison where they call it the man down button,
Hmm.
where another fight broke out. So they had to go help out another guard. One of the guards come and uncuff me from the bed and say, hey, you better think that name that you called, but we're coming back after you.
Wow.
So that was my road to Damascus experience, because immediately I turned my face to the wall, and I told the Lord that I surrender all. And can I tell you something? I tell people all the time, Jesus was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yes.
And I thought because I was at an older age pastoring, not even before pastoring, I was on the road for 17 and a half years before I started pastoring. It'd be my 5th year next month in May, pastoring. And what happened was, I was like, how in the world I've been through all this and I'm at a late age. These people been doing this all this time. They're younger. And the Lord told me, he reminded me, he says, I'm a redeemer of time. I said, Lord, what do you mean by this? When the man that was standing at the gate, and this is going to bless someone who has been in things, when the man sitting at the gate, who never walked before in his life, Peter says, silver and gold I have not, but such as I have. He took them. The Bible says that this man leaped and he ran. A man who never walked before in his life. And the Lord said, see, what happened was I placed this man back in the position he should have been a long time ago.
Yes.
And God is a redeemer of time. And no matter what, even though you haven't done it before, God knows how to place you back in the position you should have been a long time ago.
Well, that it takes faith, because without faith, nothing is possible. You have to definitely have faith, and also share this good news. Share this with everyone, just like you're doing here today with us, Pastor. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, are you getting engaged or married soon? There is so much to tackle when it comes to planning that big day. But besides the brides, and sorry, fellas, the wedding cake is the centerpiece of it all. Next, we'll have Sharonda Lawson of Baker's Delight. She'll join us and give us the 411 on selecting the right cake for that special day when we return.
Listen, you're my friend.
I noticed you haven't really been yourself recently.
Yeah, I feel like something's up.
How are you?
Are you okay?
Is there anything you want to talk about?
I just want to know how you're feeling.
And listen, even if you don't know what to say, I'm here to talk.
No matter what you're going through,
I just want you to know I'm here.
I've got your back. When you want to talk, I'm here.
Welcome back to the FAVR Show. I'm Pamela Lowery, and on this segment, we're doing something in the bakery. We have Sharonda Lawson from Baker's Delight, and this is for all the brides, people who are having special events coming up, but most importantly, weddings. So we're talking everything weddings here. So I see you have 2 amazing wedding cakes here.
Yes.
But first, before we start, how do you get started in baking?
Okay, so how I got started is it's not your traditional story. I had no desire to bake. I was in corporate America in the mortgage industry, and my dad passed away.
Okay.
So I learned how to cook from my dad and my grandmother.
Okay.
And when he passed away, I felt like I wanted to do something just kind of pay, you know, a little homage to him. And so I started writing a cookbook.
Wow.
Yes. I started writing a cookbook, thinking of all the recipes that were passed down to me and just different things that I cooked for my family. And I would post pictures on Facebook, like little teasers.
Yes.
And so everyone kept saying, oh, are you going to start selling food?
Okay.
It was a firm no. Absolutely not.
But until God said yes.
Until God said yes. And so fast forward to one of my sons was having a birthday. I could not find a bakery to do exactly what I wanted done. So I said, forget it. I'll try it. And if it tanks, he's going to love it because Mommy did it.
Yes.
And I posted pictures, and again, here comes the questions. Are you going to start selling cakes? No, I don't know what I'm doing with cakes. I don't know how to do this. And this was luck. And so I prayed about it.
Okay.
I prayed about it, and I was sitting at work at my desk, And it was like the Lord just spoke to me, and he told me, this is what you need to be doing. You need to walk away from corporate America. So I called my husband, and I said, I think I need to quit my job. This is exactly what I said. I think I need to quit my job and focus on this business that I have no idea what I'm doing. And he said, well, if that's what you feel the Lord has led you to, then I support you. And then Baker's Delight was born.
Yes.
And the Baker's part is my grandmother's maiden name.
Okay.
So I had to, you know, pay some respect to her. Baker's Delight was formed. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no training. Didn't know how to decorate, ice a cake, anything. But I never turned down an order.
That's right.
People would say, "Oh, can you make this?" And I would be like, "Yes, I can." Yes. And I never turned down an order. I never doubted myself.
That's right.
I trained myself.
That's right.
And
then here we are.
Here we are.
But then also too, everyone, she's in Target stores. So tell us about that.
I have a local partnership with Target. It was kind of weird how that happened too, because mind you, Target has an in-house bakery. So when they reached out to me, I thought it was spam.
Yes.
Because you guys have a bakery, why are you reaching out to me? Well, Target is trying to build community relations.
Yes.
And they were supportive of Black-owned local businesses. And
see, you were obedient.
Yes, I was.
And you heard his voice, and he told you what to do.
And I did it.
And not in a million years would you ever expect to be inside of Target stores.
No.
Okay, now let's jump into these cakes. Now tell us about if someone is getting married. Because look, I'm pulling out the plate already, because I want some. I want to try some.
So first and foremost, outside of the bride, the cake needs to be the center piece. You want your wedding cake to stand out when you walk into that reception.
Yes.
You want the wedding cake to be the wow factor. The groom's cake too, but the bride's cake is the main attraction.
Okay.
So not only do you want it to look good, you want it to taste good.
Yes.
So I have brought you some things to taste.
Come on now.
This one right here, this is a very popular one. It's our Wedding Bells flavor.
Okay.
And it's a vanilla buttercream with a raspberry filling.
Okay.
That was very good. It's very popular with the brides.
Okay.
And even some birthday cake
Thank
orders.
You, God.
Thank you, Lord.
This is real good.
Yeah.
Girl, this is like, I'm gonna just be slamming on it. So, I have a question for you. That's really tasty.
Thank you.
What do you do if you're a bride and you're planning a wedding? And some of your guests have food allergies? What do you do in a situation like that?
Well, it's very important as a bakery owner, or even if you just sell treats, it's very important when you receive an order, you ask those pertinent questions. Are there any food allergies? What type of allergies? Because for certain allergies, you have to take extra special care of how you wash your equipment, even if it has never touched a peanut. But if you have mixed something in there that has been in a factory with peanuts, that can absolutely have an effect on your product. So you ask those questions, because for me, I pretty much steer away from if they have a peanut allergy, I don't want to take that chance.
Yes.
Because peanut allergies are like the worst allergies to have. But you ask those questions beforehand.
Now this chocolate cake here, what is this chocolate cake?
That one is a triple chocolate cake with a chocolate ganache filling. That's typically what grooms order. That or German chocolate, but that is
really good. This is really good. Chocolate ganache, darling. Chocolate ganache. This is really tasty. So is it customary to have a groom's cake at the wedding?
Yes, absolutely. It's customary to have a groom's cake. The groom's cake is typically a little smaller than the bride's cake, because this is a centerpiece. But it's absolutely, you don't want to leave the groom out.
No, we don't, because besides the bride, we're thinking about the cake.
Yes, he has to have something too. So it's very customary to have a groom's cake. You can also, you see these extra treats here.
Now these treats here, I wouldn't want nobody to eat any, because they're so cute. So let me try
them. This one is a cookie butter bar.
Okay.
So it has a
now how do you eat this? Now how can you be cute at the wedding and trying to
hold your hand under your mouth like that when you're eating it? So there has a Biscoff cookie in the middle, and then the cookie butter filling, and then it's enclosed in chocolate.
Wait a minute. So you're self-taught.
Yes.
And this is amazing.
Thank you.
And it has little gems on here as well,
yes,
edible
little
gems.
Gold, edible gems. And then you have some 24 karat gold. That's real 24 karat edible gold. So, you know, you get a little fancy with it.
So what are the ranges for cakes? So the cake pricing, say, you know, you want to have a small wedding or even a large wedding. What are some of the ranges as it relates to cakes?
Different bakeries price their products differently, but the way I price mine is by serving size. We start there, and then we go up once you start adding on things. So for wedding cakes, the servings start at $7 per serving. Yes. And then if you want to add, you know, the 24 karat edible gold, the gems, the brooches, and you know, if you want real florals, real florals cost more than silk.
Now, how much time do you need in advance to call your baker?
Yes.
Or the bakery to let them know, I want a wedding cake? How much time in advance?
Typically, because you do not want to run into an issue where you don't have anyone available to bake your cake. So for a wedding cake, you want to at least try to get that out of the way between months 4 and 5 of your planning.
Okay.
So you want to get that out of the way. Your tastings can happen around month 6, but don't treat it like a birthday cake where you try to call your baker up 2 weeks prior. You want to schedule that 4 to 5 months in advance.
How can our viewers get in contact with you nationwide? And also, do you ship? Do you?
Absolutely. So these treats can be shipped. The cake slices can be shipped because I do offer a tasting box. Those tasting boxes have 3 different flavors of cake, 2 fillings, and 2 icing choices. And then like a little sultry palate cleanser.
Just a little something. Something for the bride.
And so that can be shipped. You can go on my website, www.bakersdelight.com. That delight is D-L-I-T-E.
Get it right, you guys, when you're putting your orders in.
Yes.
Baker's Delight.
bakersdlite.com. And you can absolutely order things to be shipped or picked up. And if you want a custom cake, you can place an inquiry for a custom cake order on the website as well.
Well, thank you so much, Sharonda. Thank you for stopping by. Now you are officially a part of the FAVR family. So if you want more information, check out bakersdelight.com, correct?
Bakersdelight.com.
Bakersdelight.com right here. And thank you again for visiting us on the FAVR Show. Stay tuned for more right after this segment.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay. Just go to the site.
We all understand that mental health is essential, but did you know that some of the earliest signs of Alzheimer's or dementia can be as young as 20 years old? Joining me is Tanesha Tyler-Carr with the Alzheimer's Association. Hey, how are you doing? And thank you for coming to the FAVR Show.
Thank you for having me.
So, as young as 20 years old?
Yes, actually to date, the youngest person to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia was 25 years of age.
Wow. So it's not an old person's disease.
It is typically characterized as a senior's disease because the typical onset is 65 years of age, but there is a growing number of the 6 million Americans living with the disease. 20% are people who are living with younger onset, and this can be individuals who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
So is it normal as time goes on, as you get older, is it normal to have dementia? Or because I know some older people who are perfectly fine. So is this a normal condition? Is this common?
That's one of the biggest myths, is that this is a common condition. And dementia, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. So when you think about dementia itself, it's not a normal part of your aging process, no matter how old you are. Dementia itself is an umbrella term. It's more of a classification and not a disease. And under that umbrella term, there are symptoms like memory loss, cognitive decline, personality changes, and those symptoms are typically caused by a disease, which Alzheimer's disease is a neurological condition, but it's classified as a type of dementia, but it's never a normal part of your aging process as you age to have any form of dementia.
Now, we all know an older person and they may have have dementia, but then we say, oh, it's just normal because I'm getting older, I'm forgetful and things of that nature. But this is something that we have to take serious as signs come about. What are some of the signs and symptoms that one of our loved ones or our parents may have dementia and also Alzheimer's?
Well, typically we have memory-related changes as we get older. That's just natural. I can't just think of how many times I've forgotten where I parked my car or laid my keys, but I have the recall to retrace my steps and find those items. But one of the largest memory-related concerns or changes that you'll see is if someone has lost something and they're not able to retrace their steps. So once they lay it down, it's lost. Getting lost in familiar places like your neighborhood that you've been in for 20, 30 years, getting lost going to the grocery store, getting lost going to a family member's house. And it's happening more and more often, or losing pockets of time. You may have had a conversation with a family member maybe a few days ago, but then when they call you to kind of reference that conversation, you have no memory of that conversation.
Tell you, sometimes I forget small stuff like that, and then like, oh my gosh, do I have dementia? Do I have Alzheimer's? Because I have relatives who have been diagnosed with dementia and or Alzheimer's. But then at the same time too, I had a relative who was diagnosed with dementia because of alcohol abuse. So can you tell me more about substance abuse and the correlation with dementia and Alzheimer's?
Right, and that's a kind of an alcohol-induced type of dementia, and that can happen. People, which is one of the risk factors, and we like to say risk factors because there are different risk factors that can attribute to someone being diagnosed with a form of dementia. And alcohol use, excessive alcohol use is definitely one of those. Drug abuse, if there are issues with thyroid, medication, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, these are diseases that can definitely raise your risk of having a form of dementia. But if these things are corrected, typically you'll see those dementia symptoms dissipate. But like with your relative, just years and years and years of alcohol use resulted in him, developing dementia.
Yes, so that's what I want to make sure I tell the audience. You say, oh, I'm just having a drink here or there, but if you have continuous alcohol usage, drug usage, all of these things catch back up to you when you get older. So it's not a win-win, it's a win you're going to lose later. So you can't necessarily prevent dementia and Alzheimer's, but you can take the necessary steps. And what are those that you can just try to streamline your body in the right direction? Because again, it's not common, right?
Absolutely. I want to just completely relay that again. That's one of the biggest myths, and specifically in the African American community and communities of color, that this is a form of normal aging, and it is not. So it's important to understand it's not a normal part of aging, but it is important to know your risk. And I'm so glad you made that point about prevention, because there's a lot of information out there about prevention, but we understand risk reduction is the more appropriate term because we are not yet at a point where we have a treatment or procedure that is going to be preventative with Alzheimer's and other type of dementia. So when we talk about risk reduction, we have some curriculum called Healthy Living for Your Brain and Body, and we talk about things you can do just to reduce your risk. Healthy eating. We go to the doctor's office and we roll our eyes at our doctor. They're always talking with us about what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat, getting exercise, socialization, and sometimes that's easier said than done. But you want to start small. Definitely exercise. A healthier diet is always key.
But it's so hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
With everything that's going on, people always say exercise, exercise, exercise. And it's hard sometimes to incorporate that into your normal schedule. And there's so many different ailments out there, but exercise is always the key. It's
Absolutely.
Just getting up and exercising.
There's a protein that your body can produce called brain endorphins, and that's when you are trying to it's called brain-derived neurotropic factor. And that is something that is definitely risk reduction. It's great for your body. You do that when you exercise and when you stimulate your brain, it produces that protein. And it's important to have that because that's going to definitely help with risk reduction when we talk about brain health over time, as well as body health and overall health. But, you know, exercise can be something simple. Exercise is different to everybody.
It is.
That may be taking a walk. That may be going to the gym. That may be lifting weights, but also that may be dancing. You know, that may be parking and walking in your destinations wherever you're going.
It's the small things.
It's the small things.
So more or less, we got to make sure we're taking care of our brain.
Absolutely.
So
brain health is important.
Our viewers want more information. Where can they get more information?
Well, if you are interested in getting more information about reducing your risk for Alzheimer's disease or really understanding how Alzheimer's disease affects your community and get some facts and figures, first we want you to go to our national website, alz.org, and then also to get our 2021 and 2022 facts and figures for Alzheimer's disease, you can also go to alz.org/facts, and then you can call our 24/7 helpline, where there's a staff member like myself, and several staff members that man this helpline for 24/7. Anytime, any day. You can call this number at 2 or 3 in the morning if there's a crisis, if you need to get some resources. And all of our resources at the Alzheimer's Association are free. Referrals, anything that you need to really help you navigate this journey. And that number is 1-800-272-3900.
Thank you so much for that good information. In recent entertainment news, there was a major shakeup at the Oscars, which we won't discuss here on Favor. But rather than focusing on the events that happened, did you think about these events spiritually? Favor fam, we have to remember that we are spiritual beings living in a physical world. Famed actor Denzel Washington said, and I quote, "At your highest moments, be careful. That's when the devil comes for you." So what does that mean for you? Stay prayed up. Know the tactics and schemes of the enemy, and know the word. In Ephesians 6:11, scripture states to put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. The enemy will use whatever he can and whoever he can to keep you away from God's promises. The victory has already been won because the spirit that is in you is greater than the spirit that lives in the world. I want to thank you all for joining us, but before you leave, I want to let you know that when you keep God first, everything will fall into place, for his word always stands true. God bless and take care.
I don't really know what I should be thinking, but I know that I have changed.